Suit up, strap in, warm the tires, and leave on yellow. Time for the MitsuTimes podcast, presented by MitsuTimes.org, the home of the fastest Mitsubishi cars. With your host, Josh.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Josh from MitsuTimes. Today, my guests are some of the members of the Mitsubishi Lancer Turbo Club.
We have Isaque, Jonathan, Hiram, and Lee. How are you guys doing today?
We are great. Thank you for your invitation.
Absolutely. This is our first, big group, more than two people. And I feel like it's the perfect place to start because the Mitsubishi Lancer Turbo Club is so unique. We wouldn't even have a Lancer list if it wasn't for you guys, so thank you for that. And we're already seeing a huge impact on the community, not just the list itself, but also dyno numbers. We're seeing people being influenced to build their build based off cars they've seen on the list. You know, a lot of people, Isaque and I talked a little bit on our podcast, but people maybe feel like they couldn't build their Lancer, and now they're starting to see that they can. So a huge shout out to you guys for that. And I just want to get the inspiration. I know the inspiration behind a couple of the builds, but I want to talk about why the Mitsubishi Lancer Turbo Club as a whole. Why did you guys get it started?
The funny part with this was just, kind of started with Jonathan and I, where we would talk here and there because we both were boosted Lancers, and you really didn't have a lot of resources or places where you could ask even those dumb questions without everyone telling you, don't bother, just buy an Evo. And
even still, you can't do it outside of Mitsubishi Lancer Turbo Club.
That's true too. So then after, some time, we just said, let's just start our own group. And, we really didn't have any aspirations as to how big or small the group would go. It was just kind of I guess you'd call it a safe haven, where you could ask some questions of like, hey, how can I boost my Lancer? What kind of kits can I get? And you'd have at least some people with some basic knowledge that could give you some input and kind of guide you in a way that really wouldn't, put you off,
Right. No, I feel like safe haven is definitely the perfect terminology because, just like you guys were saying, you can't really ask it outside the club. If you went to, a regular Evo 10 group and said, hey, I have a base model Lancer, I want to turn it into an Evo 10, they're probably going to get at you sideways to where you're not going to get any usable input out of that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Funny enough, Lee has an Evo, and quite a scary one. So it's always interesting because a lot of my friends have Evos also, and some of them, they won't even try to line up with me. But you still feel that, it's just a Lancer, it's a base Lancer, it's a base model. You might have a big turbo, doesn't matter, but it's still not an Evo. But we never built these cars to be Evos, so it's all good. And I always enjoy the humor in it because I'm not going to take these things seriously. If car guys want to, flex on the fact that they have Evos or whatever models of cars, go ahead, flex away.
I mean, I'll say on my part, having an Evo or having a base Lancer, everything that we've built and done, you have way more experience, way more interaction with people, the joy, the learning, the fundamentals of basic mechanic stuff on a base Lancer is way more beneficial than saying, oh yeah, I bought an Evo and I just put a big turbo kit and that's what they make.
Right.
Over saying, hey, I had to, like Isaque said, I worked with Jonathan, I worked with Hiram, and it's been X amount of years to build something that can keep up to my Evo, or like he says, where other people won't even line up with them. I think that's way more cool than saying, oh, I got an 800 horsepower Evo. Like, whoop-de-doo, so does everybody else.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
But how many 600 horsepower front-wheel drive Lancers do you see, right?
Yeah. Honestly, the experience of air-quoted building, right, a turbo Lancer, and I only say air-quoted because some people do not like to call it a build, only because we can find a lot of bolt-on stuff, and we don't necessarily have to like open up a motor and like change internals and all that. So like, sometimes it feels wrong, only because some people like go above and beyond with their build, and when you put a turbo on a Lancer, to you it is, right? But for some people it might not be. But either way, the experience of doing that, it feels, because I have built Evos and I have built Rallyars. I actually own also a Rallyar of my own now, and the experience is like it feels more whole on Lancer. You have a lot more to play with. You have a lot less to worry about when it comes to your financials, versus building an Evo and a Lance and a Rallyar. And you now have sort of like a guide and step by step that you can follow to make your Lancer turbo and tune and upgrade, downgrade, what you can upgrade easily and whatnot. And if something happens, you can always reach out to just about any mechanic, if you have the knowledge or the resources or tools to, let's just say, replace a transmission. Let's just say that, right? Most of us has gone through transmissions because of the little support that there is out there for like higher horsepower manual Lancers, even automatic, and it helps you understand more about cars than when you have an Evo. Because when you have an Evo on it, you don't know what you're doing. You have to take it to a shop, like to deal with the all-wheel drive, to deal with subframes, alignment, and all that. When you have a Lancer, it feels like you can do more yourself. And that's the way I felt it. You can try to do the alignment. You don't have to worry about like real rear tires, like the Evo, and the experience. Or you're more interested, and that's the way I felt it with the Lancer versus other cars, honestly. And there's a lot of support out there, because when you think about it, and the whole picture is just a regular car, but it's like one of the regular cars I've ever had.
That makes sense. Lee, I wanted to ask you, do you feel like the Mitsubishi Lancer Turbo Club bridges the gap between the base Lancers and the Evo, or do you feel like that's kind of a gap that can never really be bridged?
Personally, I think that really just comes down on the person. I mean, you'll have people that'll, to this day, say, oh, it's still a base Lancer, it's not an Evo, right? Everybody, I won't say everybody, some people say it's just the title. Me personally, I will say some of the base Lancers, I can say this. Me and Hiram, we just finished doing a base Lancer. It's a front-wheel drive. We put an Evo motor in it, used a factory 5-speed. It was like almost 400 front-wheel horsepower on the dyno. And the driving experience, I can say, in that thing, the amount he paid, the power he put down on basic pump gas to compare it to, say, what my Evo made at around the same horsepower, it was way more to build it, like obviously fuel pump, fuel system, all that kind of stuff to reach that horsepower. I I don't want to sound biased, but I would definitely take a base Lancer Turbo over a Rallyart. I could say that now. The Rallyarts are nice in that, but like performance-wise, depending what you want to do with the car, I mean, like Jonathan said, working on a base Lancer, you can do a lot of it yourself, right? Which I think for people who get into a drag scene, which kind of seems to be what a lot of base Lancers are going to right now, I would way rather use a base Lancer. I don't think it'll ever surpass what the Evo platform has been able to accomplish. Like, it's been around way longer than turbo base Lancers, right? But say you put this, give the base Lancers 20 years, where eventually you find out a all-wheel drive swap, or, people are going into different LSDs and stuff like that too, to go from there to see what the potential of them can be, right?
Yeah, definitely.
On that question, I want to say that it all depends on what you're expecting from your car. For a lot of people, that would close the gap massively between both because I've known, because I have also helped sell parts and like gather parts, source parts for people both in the Lancer community and the Evo community for years, like parting parts and things like that. And let me tell you, you'd be surprised the amount of people that own an Evo and they never go beyond stock horsepower. Like they don't like they put some coilovers and wheels and they're done. They are enjoying the car and there's nothing wrong with that. What I'm saying is you have a way broader experience when it comes to horsepower and performance under Lancer over Evos. And yeah, I think that people, the experience gap it's lower. So they can say they're it feels like to drive an Evo because there's this power. But let me tell you, for what they want, car that you can get like 28 miles per gallon. You can floor it, you know, and enjoy having like a very good acceleration on a highway or, you know, doing a roll or something like that. The experience, it's very good. It's probably better than some Evo owners, you know, like some people do not, and I don't blame them for that, but they don't like to like drive their car from the dig, like, you know, from 0 to 100. It's very detrimental to the drivetrain, and they just don't like it. They're just not into it. And when you take all of that in consideration and you compare it to someone that has a Lancer and it doesn't give ish about it, right? Like, oh yeah, if I blow the transmission, I'll just get another one for $300, $200, and put it myself, you know, on a couple of hours. So,
yeah, I definitely agree. I think that you know, like you guys were saying, the base model Lancer is definitely more affordable and more something that you can work on yourself, whereas the Evo seems to be, you know, a more complex system. But Hiram, I wanted to ask you, you know, what was it like when the first person reached out to you? Maybe it was Isaque, I'm not sure, and said, hey, you know, I'm looking to do this to my base model Lancer and make some power out of it. What was your initial reaction?
Well, the funny part here is that where I come from is from Puerto Rico. We have that strong scene of racing, so I get used to work with those Lancers before I you know, go overseas.
Okay.
And was very funny because all the guys said the Lancer platform, like base ones, is everything about that is funny. It's funny, you know. It's a cool ride, gives you another stage of racing. I don't know how to say it, but when you buy an Evo, you are like on another category with the base Lancers. You have a whole abroad, you know, cars to compete. It's the 200, 300 horsepower area, maybe 400. You can race whatever car and front wheel drive, Volkswagens, GTIs. You know, you have a good, funny experience when you have that kind of car, you know.
Oh yeah.
I cannot compare like a Civic or something like that because, you know, that platform is a lot more powerful, you know, more developed, but still is a cheap, reliable, funny way for that. And for your question, was great. We started with Jonathan. I just reached Jonathan through the forums, and this guy text me. We just worked on his car, and later he was Johnny. He was grateful with yeah, and he just told me, hey, I have a Canadian guy that needs your service. I will give you his phone number. So we started everything overseas.
There is a little bit of a fun story behind that, but it is that I boosted my car, and it's funny because I knew Hiram before I boosted my car. And then I was sort of struggling with the tuning and like dialing up and all that. And then one day I was like, wait a second, why am I not tuning with Hiram? Like, what am I doing here? And I reached out to him, dude, and we did it. We did it in a couple of hours. Obviously, there's times where you have to like do one or two more sessions to catch up and like finish up with like the little details. But in like a couple of hours, and I was with my wife, that she's not really into cars, but she was having fun too, hearing us talking and like making jokes and things. And it's an understatement to say like I was fine with it. It's an understatement. I was so excited, and I was like, oh, I started reaching out to people that were like sort of in the same page as me, and that's when I reached out to Isaque, and I said like, hey, dude, listen, you have to reach out to this guy. This guy's a Puerto Rican, like he's a friend of mine. You have to let him mess with your car. Like you have to experience it, and that's when it all started.
Hey, Isaque, I wanted to ask you, get your perspective. You spend a lot of time in the States. You spend a lot of time abroad. I'm sure most people know that you're Canadian. There's 6 cars on the Lancer list. 4 of them are Canadian. One's from Puerto Rico. One's from Orlando. We could, argue that Orlando is Puerto Rican adjacent. Why is it that we don't see more stateside base model Lancer builds on this list?
Well, we do have a few guys, some in Ohio. There's one in Chicago, one in California. I just don't know if they've actually gotten on to the dyno or even on the track to kind of lay down some times. That's kind of the bigger thing. A lot of the stuff, like even when Hiram first tuned my car, the first time I met Hiram, this was all done on the streets. Like just like Jonathan, my wife came with me, sat in the driver's seat holding the laptop, and 1:00 in the morning, we were out in Mexico, doing a a lot of adjustment. So it's kind of like at that point, the car just became a monster, and it like John, like to say that I was happy, that was just an understatement. Like the car was just performing beyond what I could imagine. Granted, of course, Luchin was my builder, so I definitely have to put those two things together. A tune can only go so far if your build is not as solid as it needs to be. But I find that, for me at that point, like that was enough, and I was so happy. And a lot of these guys, even who get tuned, street tuned, sometimes even off of the base map, they're like, oh my God, this car is incredible. They just opened up 120 horse with like, one tune to the next. And it's like, so for them, some of them, that's enough. And some guys, that's all that they care about. The reasons why guys turbo their cars, I never had the aspirations to reach where I've reached now. I blame Hiram for that, because it was like, oh, why don't we put in a 4B11T? And I was like, no, the car's running great. It's like, oh, let's do it. You have an engine right there. And all of a sudden it was like we're ripping out an engine. I think it was Christmas Eve when he came to visit, and like, here we are. But most people, I think it's just they're satisfied with having a, turbo Lancer with a rally art setup, 10, 12 PSI, daily driver, repeatable. And honestly, like, I know for being so close with Luchin, he even says it. These things are great as, a mild 10 PSI, 12 PSI turbo tune. They're amazing, fun cars to drive. So for a lot of people, I think that's kind of the benchmark for them. And going further to sort of, extend it into like, oh, I want to get some dyno numbers, I want to get some quarter mile times. I'm not sure if that's really sort of their thing, right?
Yeah.
Because as a base Lancer, you're never thinking about dyno numbers or quarter mile times. You put my times up against Evo's I'm at the bottom of that pack easily. So it's sort of one of those things where for them, they're just happy with, that street tune and having it reliable and using it as a daily.
I think that makes a lot
Yeah.
of sense.
I also think that just to put it on perspective and to use a comparison, let's just say compare it to the obvious little race cars, which are the Civics, right? They have a lot larger support base. Like they have so many brands that support them. They have so many information out there. And considering that we started getting the Lancer in the US in 2002, and before that we had the Mirage. We had like little to no support, and arguably the Lancer also had little to no support until I don't know 2008 with the last gen. When somebody wants to build a car, like to like put down numbers and things like that, we all know that the Lancer is not the first thing that they're going to think about. It's going to probably be one of the last, right? Especially, I don't know, 10 years ago that we did not have the community that we have now. So a lot of the local places will not even, like the Lancer will not even come to their mind when it comes to like putting things to a car, right? Like doing something to a car. And yeah, I think that that's a big piece of why you might not feel that there is so much competition when it comes to like dyno numbers or quarter mile numbers. And it's a big piece because I think that with the community that we currently have, a few years down the road, you'll probably have a lot more support because as incredible as it sounds, there's still people out there developing things for this car, which has been discontinued for, half a decade. Well, I think over half a decade by now. And I think that would be a big factor of why you don't feel that there is so much like going on simultaneously with these cars. Like you might not feel a lot of entries compared to other cars because like if we put the Civic, right? The Civic has the SI, which is pretty much the same chassis, pretty much the same body, right? And you can put everything on the Civic. It's not the same with the Lancer. To say it does have a performance line and trim that is not 100% compatible. Like there's a lot of differences that would be very hard to make compatible. And I think that's probably the bigger piece as to why it's not as competitive as it might be with other trims and other brands and models. So.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. Lee, what's your take? Why do you think that it's more popular to drag race your base Lancer that you've turbocharged in some places and not the other? Is it more sort of just working with what you have, or is it a culture? What do you think?
I'll be honest. Where I live here, I'm on the West Coast out in Vancouver, right? And they got a good racing community out here too. A lot of it is we don't have very many base Lancers to drag. Kind of like Jonathan said, a lot of the stuff out here is Civics, right? The small community that we have here, I mean, we started building a Turbo Lancer community here just based off of what I've done out here with Hiram, right? Like we've gone back and forth, but Isaque has a way larger community of them over here. Too many people out here, I hate to say it, it's, oh, go buy an Evo. Or they have GTRs, or it's a lot more, I guess you could say, like in the States, a Miami style, right? It's the Lancer community is good for drag racing. Like now that we have some of the turbo guys out, even the NA guys, now that we've done work with Hiram out here, I have started seeing a lot of the guys go out, kind of, get videos sent to us, Backroad Mexican Racing. NA, like they're not even turbo cars. The guys are just out there having fun with the NA. The main thing I think for me is Jonathan kind of nailed it on the head there. Is it's affordable and it's similar to Civics, right? Like any Civic, Ford Focus, the turbo ones now, the Golf R's. It's a platform that I know out here will get bigger. Just right now, it doesn't have much of a following for where I am, right?
Yeah, and I definitely agree. It's got to be one of those things where all the pieces to the puzzle kind of have to fall together. Now, Hiram, I want to get
Yeah.
your point of view on this because Puerto Ricans as a whole, we kind of see them make the most out of, let's say, the base model Lancers, and I hate to go make the comparison to, we seen Mirages back in the early '90s that came factory with the 1.8, but they were keeping up with DSMs at the time, and we kind of see the same sort of
I
culture with the
have,
base Lancer.
yeah. On my back, I have a big responsibility here because uh, from each town to each town, we are a small little island that maybe on each town we have like 3 or 4 dinos. We have a big and huge competition here, and as Puerto Ricans, we love so much the Mitsubishis. Of course, we have here all cars, Hondas. We have bigger, expensive cars too. All the platforms that we are like racing right now. But as part of being a Puerto Rican, you started from your high school with a Mirage or a Lancer or everything. That's your starter car. And yes, is huge. I have a big responsibility on that because the competition here is huge. And with the Lancers, my responsibility was like you know go ahead and push the limits of each car. Everything was done here, like at least like 80% of the knowledge that I have from the cars was here, with try and error. Breaking trannies, breaking engines, what happens, go again, build it, why this car broke. Pushing the limits was a longer path on them, just to give a new customer just the recipe of what will be right now uh, a daily driver and something that will not break. It's a good platform. I love it. I tune all Mitsubishis, whatever car, can be a Montero, can be a Mirage, can be a 3-cylinder hatchback, brand new. But I love this platform. It's a one fun to drive.
Yeah, and kind of like you were saying, Haram. I think back to, like I was saying earlier, like the mid '90s, the late '90s. You would see the base model Lancers or the Mirages at the time, Technicas, and people were throwing turbos not 4G63 swapping them, not adding something else, but taking the 1.8 or the 1.5 and putting a turbo on that instead. And I feel
Yes,
that's
yes.
why I feel like the what you guys are doing is kind of following that culture, kind of following what was started back then by the Puerto Ricans.
Yeah, yeah. We are crazy guys, we made so crazy swaps. We have one that is very famous here that we just grabbed the 6G75 from the Eclipse,
Yep.
and we just swap it on a Mirage. That thing just can go 300 horsepower NA just on the dyno. And all the performance mode that you can do it, cams, headers, some stuff that you don't have support. Is everything is handcrafted, and you can go above 400 horsepower. It's crazy, what we do here, and it's so sad because not too much people knows about that, on the entire world, that we are making crazy stuff, and I hope that more companies can develop or help us to make things for the Mitsubishi.
Definitely.
The Mitsubishi has great engines. Also, I have a 4G94. That's the common engine that goes on a base Lancer. That's single cam. It's not a 4G63. It's a common engine for a daily car, and I push over 700 on that. of course with supported mods. So yeah, it's crazy, you know. We just push the limits of each kind of engine.
Definitely. So, Isaac, going back to you, what do you think it is? Obviously we see people pushing them, and we see, kind of like a niche market. What do we need for companies to provide us to make these cars even better than they are now? What kind of parts are you guys lacking to really hit the big numbers, have the first 10-second base model Lancer?
So I don't think there's many. There's one guy in Puerto Rico that's pushing, quite a bit more power. JDM Tony is also up around 600, but I know he doesn't really put his car on the track. We do know that the trannies are very kind of the weakest points on these cars, and there's really not a lot of upgrades that you can find. I don't think there's anything really. I know Hiram has touched base with a few companies to try to kind of, see what we could kind of go with, but then it becomes kind of a volume issue too, right? So it's really hard, because if you don't have that, interest from people, how many Lancer guys are going to need transmission support for over 600? We just don't know. I'm somewhere around the 500. I bang my gears down that track, and that tranny has held, and it's still holding great. What's going to happen with the LSD now that, there's no more open diff? We'll find out. But really, it's a very fine line, because now, we've got a lot of people interested in this, and a lot of people doing it and turboing their cars. But then that next level of like, okay, we need these kind of transmission upgrades. We want some, stronger gears or synchros. There's just not the demand for that, which is fine. It is what it is, and we'll work with whatever, we need to work with. So I think really based off of the Evos and the Rally Arts, there's a lot that we can still use to, make these Lancers kind of perform in a way that really impresses people. More than that, if you're really trying to get into a 10-second, car, that's there's going to be a lot of weight reduction that's going to be happening in the near future on my car. There's going to be a lot of, suspension setup. Those are all things that we have available. I don't think I can say that my car will be a 10-second car. That's a really far reach.
Yeah, it will. No worries.
But it's it's one of those things where it's just hard to kind of get companies to want to buy into this, just because of the fact that for the one-offs or the handful of people, 5, maybe 10, I don't even think we'd have 10. It's a reach, but it's okay. I'm super impressed, as from something that Jonathan and I started 7 years ago to where we are now, and to see kind of the list and the cars and the numbers. I'm super proud of it. And I think with what we've worked with and the tools that we've had, I can say that this platform has developed quite extensively compared to when I first wanted to turbo a car. In my Lancer, it was, non-existent. I would look at the MitsuTimes pages and just be like, wow, I wish we could have a category. And here we are now. So it's really cool.
Definitely. And to, kind of go off of that, one of the biggest feedbacks I get about the Lancer list was, wow, I didn't know anybody was doing these cars like that. But Jonathan, I wanted to get with you, because Isaac kind of spoke on it a little bit, but let's talk about the strengths and the weaknesses when it comes to squeezing horsepower out of the base Lancer, and then when it comes to turbocharging it and trying to take it to the track.
So first of all, going back a little to when we started, because now the weaknesses and strength, the perception on it, it's very different than when we started. When we started, there was so little out there that we did not know. Just to give you an example, the little people that dealt with the car pretty much told you like, oh, you can't get over like 230. Like if you go over 230 and 10 psi, you're risking blowing up the engine. So like this was back then, right? Right now we can tell people like, hey, you can go to like 280, right? And you'll still be somewhat safe, mind you. As soon as you start wrenching and like replacing stuff, you're risking blowing up your engine. Like it, we cannot be that. We have to be sincere, right? Like we have to be honest to ourselves. Now, done right under the ideal conditions, meaning like the right spark plugs, the right gap, right oil, under changing the oil on the right times, you're pretty much safe running up to like 280. But then again, you can't say like, oh, it blew up because I run this. No, it blew up because it did. Like, this is just what it is, I ran up to like 18 PSI back in the day on my stock 2.0, and that was a big boost. It would taper down to 16. But that's a lot for a stock engine. And my engine took it for like 2 years. But I had a fire due to, some lines touching the manifold and stuff, which goes back to support. Like there is nowhere, I think there's still nowhere where you go and just buy the lines, right? I used to make them for people, but that's a liability too. So it's like, that's the kind of thing that holds back the community versus other cars. You can just take it to a shop and they have like pre-made lines and things like that. So the second thing is, this car is not optimized for like aerodynamics, for like cooling, for like all of that stuff. So, for example, for cooling, we have to rely on some Evo parts, like for example, the hood, get like a very better heat dissipation and things like that. Our bumpers are also different. So there's a lot of things that come into play when it comes to like making big numbers when it comes to both horsepower and time. Suspension. We just have a family ride grocery getter suspension, both the geometry and also when it comes to spring rates and things like that, the height as well. So there's a lot that we have to think about when it comes to building a car for the drag, like to drag it. There's like spring rate from the front, height for the front, the difference for the back, control arms. Again, going back to what the guys have said about the transmission, we also don't have a lot of near non-support for the transmission. For example, we didn't have we still don't have an easily accessible LSD, which is pretty much one of the most basic pieces that you need when it comes to drag racing, right? Like you want your car to go straight. And that's like the most important part when it comes to drag racing. So there are a lot of pieces that we need to put together in order to make some better time, right? And 10 seconds, it's very fast. Like for some people, they hear 10 seconds and it doesn't sound impressive. But mind you, in my opinion, that's because they don't have a 10-second car. They don't know how much work and time it takes, and money, of course, to make a car go 10 seconds. And we have the power, I think. We just don't have someone that's willing to put down all their resources to make the car go 10 seconds. Most of us daily our cars. Most of us use our cars to go out on the weekends. They're not dedicated drag strip cars. And I think that, and the platform to me, compared to others, the platform is still young. Mitsubishi changed everything in 2007 when they released the Outlander, which was the first, pretty much the first car model that they released with the new technology, the CAN boost system, the suspension geometry and all that. and then 2008 for the Lancer and the first Evo in the U.S. So I think transmission-wise, better gears and easily accessible LSD, and then more information about suspension parts. I think we could easily break the 10-second mark. When I say easily, I am going on top of what we already have, not taking a stock out of the Lancer, of course. So I think that's what we're lacking right now, and what would be like more beneficial. But like Isaque said, I'm fine with that. I'm not expecting or wishing, right, or hoping or waiting for all the support companies to buy into the car, because we are somewhat in small community and a young community as well. And, there's much more that goes into play than just having people, when it comes to getting companies buying into something. So that's my piece.
Jonathan, adding something on that question, is I have so much faith on this platform, and not the platform, the engine, the design is so powerful. For me on NA, just giving some facts, I push it around to 40 to 50 from engines, with liter mods on NA, and I know that on turbo line is a lot more. We have a powerful engine that can be developed and be as better as a K series if we want to compare to our friends, Well, we have more things to develop on there. Our weakest point right now on the engine is the rods. The rods are very thin. The maximum that you can push from each engine, the 2.0, the 4B11 NA, can be like 260 to 40 pounds of torque, because rods are bent by torque, not by horsepower. And from the 2.4, the 4B12 is more around like 300 area to, bend out the rods. Also, the weakest point when you go and performance the engine, like revving more higher, bigger cams, you need to rev higher, are the training. The training doesn't have good synchros on it, and always when you shift gears beyond 8,000 RPMs, doesn't want to shift or explode the transmission. Those are our weakest points. Car has good axles, has everything that gives you a competitive in other car. So I hope that somebody gives you with other thing that can be used on these cars, create a parts that even get stronger. I hope to see these kind of cars doing drags and doing best times. They have the wheelbase to run a good 60 foot and make good numbers on the drag strip.
Awesome. Yeah, it's hard to say that they, the base Lancer is just full of potential, and you guys are really finding the ways to eke out every little bit that you can. Lee, I wanted to ask you, what do you see as the future of the Mitsubishi Lancer Turbo Club? Where do we go from here?
Only up, man, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I hope we can build the club just as big as, the Civic platforms are, right? That's kind of my goal for where I am too, to build a community out here. Is I want to get another base Lancer again. I want to do the same thing, just to be able to, kind of compete in that same class. So if it's something like that we can build and keep pushing it like that, that's what I can definitely see it going. The more and more it goes out, and the more people see about it, hear about it, and I don't want to say that it's simple and easy to do, but it is in a sense easy, because you're still using like factory OEM parts to build a car to get it to, say a 300 horsepower level is affordable in a sense to, if you have like you're gonna go do a turbo car, it's affordable in that sense over say doing it on a Evo or maybe a Ford Focus platform or a Subaru or something like that, right? But it's like I hope it gets big just because I love it. I think it's unique, it's wicked, it's cool. The more people that see it, they're like you said earlier, oh, we put up a list and I didn't even know people were doing it, right? So you give it another, like the Jonathan and Isaac, they started it 7 years ago, give us another 7 years. I think it will be just as big. The more, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the more publicity, I guess it gets, is I think the word I want to use.
Yeah, definitely. And it's one of those things where, you know, the more that people find out about it, the more that they're like, oh man, I can do this. Look what these guys are doing. So yeah, I definitely, I like what you're saying. I want to talk about, you know, whoever wants to answer this, but what do we do to inspire more? You guys have taken turns talking about, oh, well, there's people out there with their base Lancer who don't want to get any performance out of it, or maybe they just want to drive their Lancer and they want to save for an Evo, let's say. What do we do to inspire some of those people who think that they're stuck with the Lancer to hit the drag strip, even if it's pretty close to base? I mean, just to see a starting point, to go out there and just to have fun with the daggone car, you know, like you guys have talked about on the streets and, just taking a draggy and just seeing what you can do with it and constantly trying to improve your time, stuff like that, I feel like would just light a fire under these guys to be like, oh man, this thing actually is a lot of fun and I can go out and do this.
I think a major thing with that is just having the correct group, like a non-judgmental, go it out, like you said, go out and do it just because it's fun, right? Like you can go out and say you run a stock car because you want to have, say maybe, gain the experience of how to drive a car before you go put a ton of power behind it. That it's like, oh, you ran I had got my Evo when I first got it. I did the same thing on the side of the road. I just used I think the Cobb V3. It has a random 0 to 60 a quarter mile. It was like 14 some seconds. Could care less if it was 20 seconds. It was just enough to be like, oh, that's how you do it, right? We finished my car and it's, a different power level. Now I have to go out and launch it. I don't care personally because it doesn't matter what people want to say or what people think to me personally, right? But to other people, that's a huge thing. Like they don't want to. You have to be humble to go out and kind of do it, I find. And a lot of that, there's too many people that, oh, your car's not fast, it's a pile of junk, or, I don't like that kind of stuff. I don't think that's right, but that's what I find we need more of, and more safer areas to go and do it. Like Isaac's pretty good out where he lives. It's a lot of, hey guys, let's go to the track, let's go do this, let's kind of get your cars out. There isn't no, oh, you have to be X amount of horsepower, or you have to have this type of car. It's just a open, fun community.
Yeah, we're looking at this year wasn't really possible. There was a lot of things going on, but we're hoping that next year we're going to be hosting an event at Toronto Motorsports, Cayuga, basically where I go often. We've started to make some contacts, and our dyno guy Pat from Art Motorsports, he's a huge Honda guy. You ask any Civic owner, about Art Motorsports, and almost everybody knows him. He's got a lot of contacts with the racetrack there and stuff. So we're going to try to host an event sort of a little bit more private and smaller too, because I remember my first time at the track. It's intimidating, and especially having never gone before. Huge thanks to Lucien for coming with me and kind of showing me the ropes, but it can be very intimidating, and you just kind of aren't even sure like what to do and how to stage and how to prep, and it's just a lot, right? So sometimes it's almost, you just don't bother because it's like you don't know how you're going to be looked at. So being able to do something a little bit smaller, a little bit more, private, and getting these guys, that itch. I'll tell you, the first time I went down that track, man, I just couldn't wait to get right back in line and go again. So that's sort of the hope for next year, to be able to kind of give that space for guys to just, even with, street tires, 220 horse, 230 horse, doesn't matter. Just get that feeling and get that itch of like, wow, this is really, really cool to see, my car coming down the track and seeing what it can do.
Definitely. I remember my first time, I actually red lit my first ever pass, and I thought, before I pulled up to the line, I thought, oh man, my car's going to be slow. Everybody's going to laugh at me. And even though I red lit, which I didn't even know until I got back around to the ticket booth, I was like, this is like the ultimate adrenaline rush. I cannot wait to do it again.
Yeah, I did the same thing too. I was gone on the yellow.
So I want to kind of go back a little bit because I know, Jonathan, you hit about it. Isaac, I think we talked about it in our other podcast. But when we're talking about taking your base Lancer and putting in a 4B11T, what kind of modifications are we having to do to make that work?
So it's I don't know, but I do want to say that it's easier than what it sounds like. So the first thing that people do, and in general, if you have a Lancer, you pretty much go into the Evo forums, right? Because that's the engine that you want to put. You go to the Evo forums and then you ask questions, and you get a lot of shit, man. You leave that group not wanting to do anything to your Lancer. And it's all because of misinformation, and it's all because of ignorance. And it's good ignorance. I'm not saying like it's on purpose or any of that, but you get the type of answer like, oh, this is a whole lot of work. We have this, we have the transfer case. What are you going to do with the transmission? What are you going to do with the rear differential and all that? But when you go to someone that actually did it, it's so easy that it's not much harder than replacing your engine with another with another Lancer engine. You have to change the plugs on for the cold packs, because they're obviously if you've dealt with both, they're different. The plugs are different. But they're pretty much the same thing. It's just that the plugs are different. I have seen Lancer engines changing coil packs for different coil packs from other brands, aka in this case Civics. And this was something done by a Puerto Rican, ironically, friend of mine in Orlando. His car just broke up, and he didn't have the means to find cold packs locally. So he found some Honda cold packs and he put it on the car, and he drove them down to Miami again. These are the kind of things that not a lot of people are good with. They're not really used to working with what you have. And what they need to do is just put the engine on it. And as soon as you drop the engine onto the bay, everything else is straightforward. You'll see that one of the mounts is not gonna line up, and if you have the mount from the Evo, what you have to do. You got to take the bracket from this one, and I'm not gonna go into further details because it's just you have to do it. If I tell you from my mind, I don't know. I don't remember exactly which one from which one, but I do know that you take both mounts and you make one out of both, and it fits right up. There is no welding, cutting, or none of that involved in it. The subframes are pretty much the same, except for one or two threads additional that the Evo has for the transfer case and the trans. But the engine itself bolts up the same. Let me see. You have to obviously work with the starter, because the transmission and the flywheel, it's going to be different. So it doesn't matter how similar the engine is. The transmission is you're putting the Evo solder onto the Lancer, but the Lancer has a different flywheel and trans. So you kind of no, I'm sorry. Now you're using the Lancer starter because you still have the Lancer flywheel and transmission, but the Lancer starters will not bolt right up onto the Evo engine. So when you're there's a little grinding that you need to do to kind of like make it fit onto the hole, onto the spot, and that's pretty much it. Like everything else after that is pretty much like being there, like, oh, this is gonna bolt right up in here. This is not gonna fit in this area, so I might need to extend this wire because I can't reach the sensor anymore. And it's just that, honestly, it's just like doing it. And if there's somebody having the means to get an Evo motor for their Lancer, and they also are considering doing it, I would say just go ahead and do it because it's way easier than what it sounds like and what people makes it out to be. So yeah, that's just my take on it. When we did it, it was like very uncommon. Right now, there's a lot of people doing that out there, and like this, even the Malaysian people, like they do a lot of crazy builds too on their cars. They even do the all-wheel drive, which is pretty much what we're not doing yet in the U.S. But we have so many rallyers that it wouldn't be very difficult to make. It's just like I said, go ahead and jump on it and do it.
Yeah, I'll personally stay front-wheel drive. I don't think I'll ever convert to all-wheel drive. But yeah, there's not a whole lot to do conversions. We've got a few guys here locally that have switched over to the B11Ts. Mainly, they had close access to me, so that made it easier for them. It can be a little daunting. Thankfully, too, for me, I had Hiram and Jonathan to kind of ask questions, and then Lee for the electrical and whatnot. So it's not very daunting, but it does take a little bit of precision work, more so for the starter housing, because you do need to bring in the starter towards the center of the engine because our flywheels are smaller than the rally arts and the Evos. So that's kind of the most challenging part, but not anywhere near stopping me from doing it.
It's one of those things where I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with DSMs, but a lot of DSMers start out with the non-turbo Eclipse, and we think that we're going to swap in a 4G63, and then you learn that, oh my gosh, it's going to cost $10,000 to do the modifications, and it sounds like you guys don't have that problem. It's actually, you're going to spend the money on the engine, which is more expensive, but the modifications to put it in is not as complex.
It really isn't, no.
Sounds about right.
I have a good experience with DSMs too. I used to have 198 with 1G engine on it, all-wheel drive, 4-volt differential LSD. That was a great experience. Isaque has the experience of driving that, right, Isaque?
Fun car to drive, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, it was great.
Hiram, I wanted to get your point of view because I was just looking at the stats, and it looks like, at least for the States, I can't find the stats for all of North America, but when it comes to Lancers sold in the States, it looks like over 87% was CVT equipped. If I have a CVT Lancer, can I still stick with the 280 torque figures that you're talking about, or am I pretty much
No,
JDM Tony.
I just studied like all of the years because each year has its own, improvement on the Lancer. It's also the same on the Evos. From 2008, 2010, maybe the emissions compliance, maybe, some different, on the developing. So maybe was the I don't know, the investment, the money to make it maybe more cheaper. But In resume, all the best, like the best breed, are from the 2008 to 2010. Beyond that, the cars started to get weak. And also for your question, the CVT platform, yes, we can uh, push it turbo. We've done several ones, few ones with success, others no, but it's more like on the software area, everything that we do, because Mitsubishi makes this way, that everything can be a swap or interchangeable, is great. Because for this kind of platform, for example, I can use the stock map, pull it from the Evo, and I can flash it to few stock ECUs and A1s, and will work. Your car can understand boost, car can understand all the stuff that runs, and because they are the same chassis, everything works. The CAN boost stream works, everything, the AC. It's not like a hard swap on the ECU. When comes with the CVT, remember that the ECU sends some information for the CVT to in order to shifting the schedule of that, TPS, RPM, speed. So I don't know why, but few CVTs can be done from 2008 to 2010. If I send a map of Evo, SST will work as an Evo. The same, the same feeling of the pedal, the throttle, everything. And the max power that you can push out of that belt is around that area, 280, 290. I have one that was 260, because it's more smoother for the rods or for the engine. It's more healthy. It's not like a strong push from it. It's more smoother. The spool, the power can hold a little better. But it's like a fuse. Sooner or later will be blown. No matter if you put coolers, no matter what you do on the car, sooner or later will blow up. So people always have your 5-speed swap ready to swap.
We've got a CVT Lancer that we turboed about 2 years ago, built by Luchin, and he started off with about 170 wheel, and it was fun, and 5 psi. I think now he's up to about 10 psi, pushing 220 to 230. And I'm the guy dailies his car. He's put on, I think, like 90,000 kilometers on the car, driven it across Canada. And it's still going, and he absolutely loves it. So when they work, it's great, but the CVTs are quite volatile. So
Yeah, I think that for the CVT, it's like going back to support, and not only like aftermarket support, but actual like local and our support. Just to give you an example, none of us in this conversation started building a CVT, right? We all started with a 5-speed.
Lee did.
Actually, Lee did. You're right. But like,
Unfortunately, yeah.
no. I mean, it's just what it is. Like working what we have, what we talked about earlier. But like, I've seen people, right? Like we've seen members having and struggling, like having issues with their car even before they went, turbo. Like, oh, my car is whining. Oh, my car is like lacking. Like there is a big delay now between when I give it gas versus when it actually goes. And it just goes to show that the turbo itself, like the performance itself, is not going to necessarily affect the transmission instantly. Like it's not going to be a direct I want to say reason for it to just go bad. And we have that little thought in the back of our minds when it comes to like building those cars, that we know, right? Like Hiram said, it is going to blow up, right? We don't know when, but it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So that being said, there's not a lot of people that would try and go and be like, oh, maybe I don't know, the belt from this transmission is going to fit mine, right? And like tear apart a CVT and put a bigger belt or a stronger belt, or, change sensors, changing, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? When it comes to building those cars, there's not a lot of support. There's not a lot of things and information out there that you can take to build it. So the CVT, we kind of like try to keep it limited, only because what Hiram said is very volatile. Like it's very, Isaque, it's very sentimental. Like you can just drive it one day and it can just start giving you issues, and you're not even on boost. Now I want to say that I have a friend that he also helped me work on my car, and he has built some CVTs. That was back in Puerto Rico, and he did some upgrades on the oil, on the fluid, which he would not tell me what he did. He just told me that he did some mixture with like oils from other transmissions, and he also replaced the cooling fan and used a cooling fan from a bike, which I was mind blown when I heard that, right? Because the cooling fan on the bike is like much stronger than just getting like any aftermarket cooling fan, and it helped the car like hold like much more power. Mind you, again, this has to be controlled, like Hiram said, with the sensors and like the tune, the power band. You can't just like send it all that boost. You have to do it like the power band has to be very linear. You can't just like have all that burst. But yes, just to answer the question, they can have as much fun, man, as a 5-speed, because it all comes down to what you like. Some people do not like to be banging gears, but they still would like to like feel a peppy car, right? When they floor it, when they want to give it some acceleration. It's just that when they go out to find information and ask for help, they're not going to find as much support as they would if they had a 5-speed, because they like you said, there's 87% found, allegedly, right? 87% of the cars were CVT, but out of the 13% of the 5-speed, there's probably half of them that have dealt with like performance mods. Out of the 87%, there's probably like 1 or 2% that have actually tried to get something more of it, and they wouldn't probably even be part of our community. So, to the people with the CVT out there, just know that there are things that you can do to your car. You can turbo it, right? You can have a lot of fun. You just have to be realistic, right? You can't get mad because, oh, you didn't tell me my car was going to blow up. I thought this was going to be safe, right? As soon as you start modding a car, you have to forget about that, right? This is something that you have to get on your head. Your car can blow up. Even without modifying it, your car can have issues. Like Hiram also said, the CVT was a transmission that with the years, the cars, with the years, they changed things that they not necessarily advertised. They changed modules, they changed sensors, they changed internal parts that you would only know when you are actually dealing with it. Like when you're looking for a part for your car and the one that you found, the donor car, is like 3 years newer, and then your mechanic tells you like, oh no, this transmission, I don't know, the fourth gear is different, so it might not fit yours, or it's going to fit but it's going to behave differently. So there are a lot of things that that you need to consider.
It's trash in resume.
I don't want to say it because if I have a 5-speed, I am going to say it, right? But for the people that's what they have,
Yeah,
they're
sure.
dope. Like you can get more fun, a more fun car and like more power on it. You just have to be realistic, you know.
No,
So
really, that's true. I never say no, so I just have to, have to do it. I will not recommend, working on a performance car with a CVT, for your goal. If your goal is higher, that's the first thing I will say. Hey, swap the transmission. You will enjoy it a lot better. But each one is each one.
All right, so here's a related question. What if I have a 4B12 equipped Lancer?
Oh yeah, that's the best engine for me. For me, my experience as a tuner, I love that engine. That's a 4B11T on steroids. I think that no one has like proven how much horsepower can be done on turbo, but for my personal experience, I just push it as far as I can with the mods that I can source for it on the NA platform. It's an engine that with turbo cams, because we don't have like NA cams for it, just stage from Brian Crower, Power Division cams. Stage 2 can make over 240, 250 horsepower. It's a good efficient. They comes with a larger intake manifold that kills the engine, the RPMs, that I know that with the supported mods, a good short intake, good plenum. We just done several ones with K series headers. We just changed the flange, the plate, and we put a long header tube, 421, and he likes it. So with the supported mods, I know that engine can go over 300 horsepower. Also with turbos, I done several ones that has turbo precision or stock frame turbos that go beyond 500 horsepower on pump gas. The only thing here is that engine has so the engine has like, I don't remember, it's 96 millimeters. I know that has a big stroke on it. Everything, the drivetrain hurts the drivetrain, the pinions, the gears, everything, goes all over. I have few guys that turbo his cars with 500 horsepower. That third gear, always is disappearing.
leave the
Lose
channel.
Yeah, yeah, leave the channel. But it's a good engine. It's a very good engine. I hope I see a Evo, swapping that crankshaft, because for you to make a 2.4 out of an Evo, you just need that crankshaft. You need to bore it to 88, and that's it. You will have a good engine with a lot of horsepower and a lot of torque.
Realistically, they can just swap to the SRT internals and then just use a 4B12.
It's something that I am trying to do here. One of my local guys want to make a 2.4 Evo X. That will be great.
I feel like that's an engine you just don't hear about enough.
No, it's a great engine. It's a great engine, but that's rare. That's not like a unicorn. Those comes just only on the GTS. I think some Outlanders comes with, but no more. And it's a great engine. It's a great engine, and can hold a good power out of it.
The 2.4s turboing them, like with a Rally Art turbo, it's incredible how much more you'll get. Like, let's say off 10 psi, you'll be up closer to 300 wheel horsepower on that versus the 2-liter at around that kind of psi, you're 240, 250. So the higher compression really makes a big difference. There's not too many guys who turbo the 2.4s, and some of them just end up building them, but they're fun engines for sure.
Yeah, the main thing about the 2.4 is that it's very torquey. So just like Hiram said, you can get a lot of power without even turbo it. Now, the thing is that when you actually turbo it, you're like doubling that torque, and that's what's going to kill the engine, at the end of the day. So since the 2.4 is that torquey, you can get a lot by just like doing some mods on it, like some people might mod, and you can get a bunch of bolt-ons and some custom work done and still being NA and being like high 200s, right? Well, 200s. It all depends, because there's a lot of other things that come into play, like elevation, the gas, the quality of the air, and all that. But when you go turbo, you need to be a little more careful than an NA 2.0, because when you go on the 2.0, you just send it because the torque is not going to be up there. But the 2.4, it's a massive difference when it comes to torque. So you can get a lot more staying NA compared to the 2.0 that most of the people might not, like if they experience it and they have the right information, they might not consider going turbo. Now, if you do go turbo and you do some things on it, right, like internally on the engine, it's a beast. It's a completely different monster than driving a 2.0. So just say that.
And Lee, I wanted to make sure that we're not painting the wrong picture here, because there is also, you guys also allow Evos and Rally Arts in the club. And, if they've been listening this whole time, there's a lot of information to gain for those guys. So I want to talk about, what you guys consider part of the club. I mean, I know even ASXs, I think is what you guys call them up there. Outlanders, they even have a lot to gain up there. I don't know if they come with manual transmissions, but even if not, you guys have talked about there's a little bit to squeeze out of them to have a little bit more fun with your little grocery getter.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we got we don't have any. I think you said it was the ASX. We don't have any of those here. We got RVRs, Outlanders.
Are the same. We're the same. They just changed their name. RVR is the same.
Oh, your different name. Yeah. I mean, me and Hiram have done a bunch of work out here with a broad different type of Mitsubishis. That's kind of the nice thing about being on the coast is we've done tons of USDM. We've done like JDM cars, right-hand drive, automatic Evos, automatic Mitsubishi Airtreks. We've done those. Even CVT base lancers for daily driven cars, the NAs, manual ones, guys who aren't going turbo, they just want to stay at NA platform and just leave it stock, just have better fuel economy or better throttle response. I mean, there's definitely a big following out here of like a Mitsubishi community as far as it goes, for sure. Evo platform, Rally Art, I mean, to me, it's all the same. I like just to have more of the community. I don't really care. Like there's people out here, I got buddies, they show up in their new 2023 Eclipse Cross or an Outlander, 80s old pickups, and it doesn't really matter what you drive to me, really. It's more about building a community, having fun, and everybody to learn and grow from that, right? Like the cars are just a benefit to it all. It's cool, some of the stuff you see and some of the stuff that we bring in, right? Like some of the stuff that we've got from the JDM market is just, it's unique, it's cool. Like they're wonderful cars, like everything. I got a 3000 GT at our shop right now. We're working on one of the VR4s, and I want that thing to be done so it can just come cruise around and still do stuff with us also, right? They're definitely wicked. It's I love the cars. Like I've had the DSMs, I got my old pickup, my Mighty Max pickup, I got the Evo. Like I said, they're fun. They're definitely something that I enjoy. They're wicked cars. They're super cool. There's tons of stuff out here for them, and lots of stuff to grow off of too, right? Even using the stock platforms too.
Really? Tell him about your swap on your Mighty Max. Yeah, great one.
Oh, yeah, me and Hiram have been working on that for a little bit now. I got 1987 Mitsubishi Mighty Max. It was factory carbureted, single overhead cam, 5-speed, like rusted out farm truck I found in a farmer's field for $800. Blown head gasket, was still running, driving, and I was just sitting here on Facebook one day, and I was looking into doing like a turbo swap on it, just because. I mean, we've done it on all the Mitsubishi stuff. I figured, what's the difference of throwing a 4G63 in it? I've seen other people kind of. It's an old truck, so there's kind of the same thing as the Turbo Lancer Club. There's not a lot of. I'm in 2023 back on forums again, rereading through forums and forums and forums, but. I ended up finding a 4G63 6-bolt block, which is a fully dressed. I paid like $950 for it. We put it in with the factory 5-speed transmission. We had Hiram come up. I think it was earlier this summer, and we ended up doing, again, just making a Frankenstein swap using 06 manual, like a base Lancer harness. Tearing half of that apart to use just the basic necessities from it, using Evo X coil packs to power it, eBay manifold and turbo and stuff like that, just to throw it together. But a lot of like having to use factory parts to cut and modify the intake manifold and that. But that should be pretty interesting when it's done. It'll be a pretty cool swap.
Heck yeah. There's nothing better than a 4G63 swap Mighty Max, in my opinion.
Yeah, 5-speed rear-wheel drive, too, so that'll be pretty sweet.
Heck yeah. So, guys, how do I go about, getting in the club and talking to you guys and finding more information about either turboing my base Lancer or maybe squeezing a little bit more out of my Rally Art or my Evo 10?
You can find us on Facebook, Mitsubishi Lancer Turbo Club. We all we ask is you answer 3 simple questions. It still seems to be in this day and age how boggles my mind how many people just try to join and don't answer the simple 3 questions. But you answer those questions, you're in. There is also age tuning, where Hiram and mainly Lee kind of focus on for all remote tuning and whatnot. We've got agents all around from, I'd say, east to west coast, both US and Canada. So age tuning on Facebook, Instagram. You can pretty much go on any sort of I'd say car groups on Facebook and just ask, if you're looking for a mods on your Lancer, and they'll direct you to us. We've been around enough now, so it's really cool, at least that people are recognizing us and can pass that information on. But yeah.
Yep. To add on to that, there's 2 things. One is to join, and the other piece is to stay in the community. So we ask everybody to be respectful to each other. This is something that we shouldn't really ask for, right? But I guess, we have to. If you want to stay part of the community, you don't have to be a know-it-all. You don't have to know about the platform. You just have to be open to information. You just have to, like Isaque said, answer the questions, right? If there's information that you're looking for, listen, we don't mind if people join and don't ever say anything, right? They're just here to leech and obtain and drain and learn information. And honestly, the information to boost a Lancer from 0 to 100, it's all in the community already. So the first thing after you join and answer those easy questions that we have, right, which is mainly to know that you're not a bot. We're not trying to keep spice, right, out of the community. We're not gatekeeping information. We just don't want the group to get spammed. And then after, check the pin post and use the search option. Any question that you might consider, even if it sounds I don't think anybody ever had this question, try it a couple words, because you'll be surprised how much information we have posted and offered for free that people can just go ahead and benefit from. both for Turbo and NA, for Lancer, for Outlander Sports, RVR, ASXs, even for Rally Arts and Evos. But, we're not specialized in that, so it might be more limited what you can find for those platforms. So, yeah, that's it.
What do you guys want to do to wrap this up?
Well, I guess I can say that, like I said before, if you're considering doing something to your car, everybody is welcome. We try not to judge, right? We're humans, but we're not going to judge people for what they want to do, what they have, their resources that they have access for. You can always join, say hi. You can reach out to us if you have any question, any doubt, any suggestion. We just ask to do a little research first, just to see if the information is not out there, because that's time that we put into play.
Right.
I mean, that we put into the group. But yeah, everybody's welcome here. You just have to keep in mind that we're all humans. And yeah, the information is there, and everybody's welcome. I cannot just stress it enough, because of all the different groups that we have been part of. We don't judge. So, there's no crazy idea for us, so yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I say everyone's welcome. We've seen some guys supercharge Lancers, which is another level of crazy. We don't care if you're pushing 120 wheel horsepower or 800. We do ask that everyone respects everybody, and some questions are stupid, and we've all been there. So I always sympathize with those people, but we want a community that's healthy and not toxic. And really, to put it in perspective, some of the friends that I have now started from this car community. Lee, Hiram, Jonathan, Luchin was my friend way before the Lancer community, but you really kind of don't know what's going to happen. And for me, that's kind of the biggest take from this is just the community that you build and the people that you surround yourself with, kind of defines sort of how life goes. And it's been a great ride, and I can't wait to just let it keep going and seeing how far we can all go together.
Definitely. All right, guys. Well, Isaque, Jonathan, Lee, Hiram, thank you so much for coming on here. I hope that we can continue to grow the community and get some more Lancers out there on the track, or hitting a draggy, on the dyno, so that more people can be inspired to go out there and do the same to theirs, and just keep improving. It's going to take everyone to keep improving the Lancer community.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I hope we can continue to build it, and it will be good. I know that for sure.
Thank you for listening to the MitsuTimes podcast. Check out our Instagram and Facebook for daily updates. Get added to our list by going to MitsuTimes.org and clicking Submit a Slip. Thank you to all of our sponsors.